The Dr. Taz Show, the podcast. Dr. Taz, Superwoman Wellness. Here's Dr. Taz.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Superwoman Wellness, where we are determined to bring you back to your superpowered self. Now, we're going to talk about something that drains our power in about 2 seconds, our hormones. And keeping us balanced hormonally is honestly a key to us finding our power, our mission, and our passion. And, I hate when people call us hormonal creatures, but let's face it, it's a big part of who we are, and we just need to own it. So staying on that theme, I have brought in today Candace Burch. She's a hormone health educator and media personality with over 25 years in the field. Candace is the founder of Your Hormone Balance, an at-home hormone testing and rebalancing practice that helps people get to the root, keyword there, of troublesome hormone symptoms and learn how to rebalance utilizing a combination of research-based lifestyle diet and supplement and herb suggestions. She received her master's in health education in 1979, worked in medical publishing and editing in the UK. In recent years, she was the director of education at ZRT, Hormone Testing Labs, and spearheaded a nationwide hormone testing and rebalancing weight loss program at the Metabolic Research Center. Today, she continues to raise awareness about hormone health, disease prevention through her work as a writer, a speaker, and host of Women Talking Frankly, WTF podcast. I love it. Welcome to the show, Candace.
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, you've just made me feel very welcome, and I hope I can live up to that intro.
Oh, of course you will. I have no doubt. But this whole hormone business, hormone deal, you've been in it longer than me. What got you intrigued by it, interested in it? It sounds like you built your life and career around it. Give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, well, I mean, years ago, I was a skier in Aspen. I lived in Colorado, went to college and University of Colorado and got into skiing. And went up and lived in Aspen for a while and taught skiing and found that I was having really bad knee problems. So instead of doing all the cortisone shots and the, knee surgery, I started changing my diet and getting into nutrition and got really interested in all of that. And read a great book by Paavo Airola. He was one of the early wellness people, about your biochemistry, our individual biochemistry, and got fascinated, went and got a health degree, my master's in health education. But it was when I was in my late 40s, I actually had 2 little ones because I started late with children. I was one of those maybe moms.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready. My husband and I got together and we were traveling through, we kind of hitchhiked through Europe, and then we camped in Europe, and then we ended up living there. And then there was just this moment when I was around 36, 35, I started feeling like there was this emptiness in life, and the Brits call it broody, but I realized time to have kids. So long story short, I had my first when I was 37 and my second when I was 41. So that means by the time I was moving into menopause and getting hot flashes every 20 minutes and a mood swing in between, it was hard on my kids. And there was, I tell this story before about looking at my 4-year-old Ryan one day, and she just had tears in her eyes because I was just being so mean. I was mean mommy. And it was really, it was the Jekyll and Hyde thing that I hear about all the time from my clients who are in perimenopause, those years nearing menopause. And that's where I was. And I knew it. Being a health educator, I knew I was probably drinking too much coffee and I was probably in perimenopause, and I better do something about it before I, ruined had a divorce and my children had to go into analysis. So I actually started reading. The first book I read was What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Menopause by Dr. John R. Lee, who is, he's one of the pioneers. He's not with us anymore. I was actually with him the night that he died, which is an interesting story. Yeah. But he was he was the classic OBGYN who treated all the women in Mill Valley, and he had a lot of women on synthetic hormone replacement therapy. And he decided to go over to England and study with this woman, Katerina Dalton, who had been she's the woman that put the term PMS on the map. She was the first person to define PMS and have a study published in a British medical journal. So she defined PMS and the 150 symptoms that went with it, and she identified it as a hormone imbalance. And those were, back in the 80s, 70s, we weren't talking about the concept of hormone imbalance. Who knew that there was such a thing or that you could test for it? But Dr. Lee wrote a book to talk about the fact that there are such things as hormone imbalances, and hey, what do our hormones do, and which ones are important, and which ones change our moods and our minds and our memory. And so I actually wrote to him and I said, I'm a woman and I think I'm in perimenopause and I'm a health educator and I'm scaring my children and I really need help. Can I come and study with you? And he wrote back and said, well, I'm kind of retiring. I'm writing books now, but there's a there's a biochemist in Portland, Oregon, where you live, who is starting a saliva hormone testing lab. And he's studied breast cancer. He's a researcher. I'm writing my book with him. His name is Dr. David Zava. Call him and see what, if you can learn from him. And long story short, I called Dr. Zava, who is the founder of ZRT, Zava Research and Testing. And I had a job in a day because I'm a writer. I'm a health reporter and a writer and an investigative journalist. And he said, we need you. We need someone to do health education. But more importantly, we need someone that's been through it. So I promptly had a hot flash while I was sitting there with him.
Of course.
He said, okay. It was about time. He said, you're hired.
Oh my gosh, I love this.
So I actually, not to keep talking about me, but the thing about my experience is that it's very hands-on. I'm not a doctor, but I got to learn from, I was thrown into this right in the beginning when the couple of years into this, the Women's Health Initiative came out, showing that risks were greater than benefit if you were using a user of HRT over 5 years. They were showing risks of heart attack and breast cancer that were unacceptable. They had to halt the study 3 years early. I was in there when Suzanne Summers wrote her book, Sexy Years, and really put bioidentical hormones on the map. I learned from Dr. Zava, biochemists, compounding pharmacists. It was the heyday of the functional medicine movement. So that I've been able to look at thousands of test results because of working in the lab and educating consumers. And we were even training providers back then. So that's kind of my background. So I'm pretty into it.
That's amazing. So there's so many things I want to ask you, but I do want to talk about, since it sounds like you have experience with it, talk to us about the Women's Health Initiative. What did they get right and what did they get wrong? Because a lot of that research is now being questioned, right? And saying there was a lack of personalization, there was a lack of looking at certain risk factors. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I still think that, I know that some of it was debunked, but I know that the dangers of synthetic hormones, the progestin and the estrogens that are derived from pregnant mare's urine, we're not horses. We don't need to be using.
Yeah, it looked like one, don't you think?
Yeah,
Right.
I try not to. There are those horsey days, but sometimes I sleep like a horse, which is good.
Right.
But I don't think what has been debunked is the fact that breast cancer rates have certainly risen in tandem with the use of HRT. In 30 years ago, or it's even more in the 60s, that Dr. Robert Wilson, who was hired by Wyeth Aris, the big pharmaceutical company that was making estrogen hormones back then in the 60s, and put out this big advertising campaign about, if you don't want to become an old crone that's shriveled and dried up and unpleasant to live with, you need to be put on estrogen hormones. And this guy went all over the country talking about this. And so all these women, millions of women, went on estrogen therapy on its own, and uterine cancer rates skyrocketed. Because there was no protective balancing with progesterone, the hormone that balances estrogen. So then they revised things, and it became synthetic estrogen with synthetic progestin, which some people feel is even worse and even riskier. So I don't think that part has been debunked. In the 30, 40 years women were on HRT, you can just look at the charts, and breast cancer rates rise in tandem with the use of HRT, which I think was the number one medication that women of a certain age were using. So we know that over 90% of breast cancers are driven by estrogen. Estrogen is a growth hormone. So that's definitely stands. The risk of heart attacks, we were told that estrogen and progestins, these HRTs combinations, protected us against heart disease and against stroke. And I don't think that has been proven. In fact, it was debunked in the Women's Health Initiative. And I don't think that they've managed to prove that it helps us. And in the interim, we became aware of bioidentical hormones, which were always there. They've been used by women in Europe for decades. And, I think when the Women's Health Initiative came out, a lot of women threw their HRT in the loo and were kind of then out in the cold. The problem was, who do I talk to? The doctor I know is trained in prescribing HRT. The doctors were not knowing how to shift to bioidenticals. But I think over the last 10 years, we've made leaps and bounds with the growth of functional medicine doctors like yourself who know that, hey, we can now test for hormone imbalances and we can individualize hormone dosing to match the need of this particular person based on their test results, based on their symptoms. And we can use a bioidentical hormone that's plant-derived from soy or wild yam, better than pregnant mare's urine. Right. And it doesn't have the karmic fingerprint of horse torture. I mean, you don't want to even know what happens to those horses that are constantly providing that hormone. So anyway, I think wherever it stands at the moment, we still have risks that are associated with synthetic hormones and very few, if any, risks that are associated with bioidentical hormones.
Yeah, that's an argument so that the conventional guys sometimes really push back against. They say all hormones are bad, bioidentical and synthetic. What would you say to that argument? What's the justification for doing bioidentical? And we can go from there.
Well, my argument, and the argument that I think is the consensus of the doctors in the field who are looking at this and who are becoming more and more savvy all the time. And in fact, of course, we're still learning. But, hormones have functions. They are essential. They rule our mental, physical, emotional life. The estrogens grew all of our female organs. Estrogen is the angel of life. It's a growth hormone. It is important. We have to have it. It has a lot to do with our heart health, with our bone health. Progesterone is the hormone that balances estrogen, and progesterone is the hormone we have to take a pregnancy to term. All of these, testosterone and DHEA, the androgens, they build bone, they build muscle, they enhance our libido, they make us strong. Women need to be strong and have stamina. All of these hormones have a role. So it gets into a conversation about, yes, you can use bioidentical hormones to relieve symptoms that you may be, and perimenopausal women are having roller coaster symptoms. And sometimes a little bit of the great balancing hormone progesterone, which is very benign and can be used in small amounts, can really do a world of good, help you sleep, calm you down. That's what I started using when I was scaring my children, and it was like night and day.
Yeah.
So the argument really is, yes, if you test your hormone levels and you test them in a medium that is going to measure your bioavailable or active hormone levels, that is the fraction that's left the bloodstream and is actually active in the target tissues, and you then you're using a Goldilocks dose of that hormone, just the smallest effective dose,
right,
to relieve symptoms, that can be very helpful and not harmful if we're using low dose amounts and delivering it. The way you deliver a hormone too, all this, but I'm speaking to the choir, but
yeah,
the way you deliver a hormone is so important. You can use a much lower dose if you use a topical hormone, because it bypasses the gut and the liver, and it goes straight to the target tissues, into the bloodstream. You don't have to use a higher amount like you do with oral delivery of hormones. So a low dose based on test results used to relieve symptoms that are making your life a misery can be a game changer for so many women, especially women in perimenopause who are trying to have a full-time career, and they're moms, and they've got interests, and they'd like to have a little time to themselves. Thank you. Trying to pull all that off can be really impossible. the question I get from menopausal women all the time is just what you asked me, but are these hormones safe? I mean, I'm in menopause now. Do I really need them? And my argument is, we women lived to be 50, 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're living to be 90.
Right.
My mother just passed. She was 92 years old. That is another third of your life that you have to go, the third act.
Mm-hmm.
Jane Fonda did a great TED talk on that. But, we have another 30 years to go. And if hormones are essential to blood flow and how our blood vessels work and how strong our bones are, and, whether or not we get imbalances that cause all kinds of skin issues where our skin starts to sag and our libido sags and we get chin hairs and we're in a horrible mood all the time. Is that really where we want to be?
No.
Not to mention, don't we want to protect our heart and our bones and our brains?
Mm-hmm.
All of those things require an essential amount of hormone. That's the job they've always done. They're fundamental. And so the idea is, nobody's saying just go out and get a prescription from someone without testing. You have to insist on testing. You have to insist that someone, interprets your results and figures out a way to help you replenish. So my argument is, we're just talking about topping up. We're replenishing. It's like there are 9 amino acids that are the building blocks of protein that our bodies do not make. Where do we get those amino acids? From the foods we eat, because our bodies can't produce them. Once I got into menopause and my body was no longer making the kind of hormones I needed to be a safe, sane person that anyone could live with, I'm going to replenish, and we're talking about all the fundamentals: sleep, energy, mental clarity, happiness, joy, being able to even experience it, because people get to a place where they'll tell me, I haven't smiled in 2 years. I haven't done anything that I want to do in so long. I just don't have any motivation. I can't work out. Or it's the other way, where women are gaining weight and they can't lose and they can't sleep and they're miserable and they're working out all the time to the extent that now they're creating another problem. Their stress hormones are all awry. So
what are those 9, what are those 9 nutrients that you think all women going into perimenopause and menopause need?
Well, I find a lot of women are in trying to lose weight or to, to follow the latest diet, or restricting a lot of foods. And it's really sort of that whole 30 Fab 4 approach that I think is best, where we know that the building blocks of hormones in terms of nutrients are proteins and good fats. Those two are absolutely essential. So I see a lot of test results with people who are vegans, and don't get mad at me, vegans. I'm saying vegans, who may not be combining proteins properly. That can be a problem. A lot of women that are vegan and have been plant-based forever, and I remember when my kids were little, they wanted to be vegetarians because they wanted to protect the animals. And we probably all need to go plant-based at some point to stop the greenhouse gases that are emitted from protein-bearing animals. But at this point in time, we need to be good at combining our proteins, learning about which, the quinoa and the chia. I just had a great chia seed pudding this morning. There's ways to get healthy protein, but you've got to get it. You can't just restrict it from your diet. We need the good fats. And that used to be, I remember when I first moved back to the United States from living in England for many years, everybody was down on fat and it was all about fat-free. So, everything was fat-free and high sugar. They just replaced the fat with the carbohydrate. I think that's when obesity really started to go up in numbers.
Absolutely.
Fat-free and fatter. So good fats like, the olive oils and the coconut, everything coconut. All the nuts and seeds, the flax seeds, the hemp seeds, the good fats in help me here. I'm running out of.
No, you got it.
Avocado.
Yeah.
Eggs, fatty fish, salmon, halibut, those sorts of things. We also need fiber, because fiber is so absolutely essential to detoxification. You know, our hormones are like anything, they have to be metabolized. We don't want them to accumulate in our system, and especially if we're supplementing with hormones, we don't want them to accumulate. And we also are exposed to hormones in the environment big time. And that's where we get into conversations about, you know, there's lead in lipstick. That's a heavy metal. There's carbon in eyeshadow. That's another heavy metal. There's, when we microwave in plastic, that plastic is leaching chemicals that actually act like estrogens in our bodies. They actually can make their way into the bloodstream and into the target tissues and depose the naturally occurring hormones that our own bodies make and get in there and overstimulate the whole system and create hormonal imbalance. So fiber can help us to detox from the many environmental sources of estrogens. Number one is estrogen that's injected into the cattle and the dairy, the beef cattle and the dairy that many women are unwittingly still eating. They're not reading ingredients. You know, you got to read those ingredients and look for the sign that says, our cows are happy cows. We don't give them artificial hormones. Because those estrogens that are used to fatten a cow, to make it fat and produce more milk or more meat, makes us fat. It goes into our system and creates hormone imbalances. So, you know, always looking for the label, pick up the carton of the eggs and make sure it says our hens have not been given any artificial hormone or GMOs or, you know, antibiotics. Because so anyway, fiber, the third nutrient, is hugely important, of course, to detox. And also vegetables, of course, our greens are also providing all kinds of minerals and nutrients that are involved in the breakdown of energy and in the, you know, in the creation of hormones. We need, like, vitamin B6. We need vitamin B6 just to make progesterone, to help us ovulate. That it's a cofactor in the breakdown of the glucose molecule, energy. So you know, we need all the nutrients we can get in the foods we eat. And I should mention also that cruciferous vegetables in particular, you know, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, those sorts of vegetables have an active ingredient, sulforaphane, that has been shown to actually help the body get rid of an accumulation of toxins or hormonal toxins. It's actually, there are pathways that these hormones metabolize down in the body, and I won't get into the weeds there.
Right.
I'm sure you know all about the phase 2 detoxification pathways. But we can help our bodies detoxify and deal with these hormones. You know, you want to use them and then you want to lose them. You don't want them to accumulate. And that's where vegetables, greens, as you know, not raw. You don't want to use cruciferous vegetables raw, but you want them every chance you get. And some people are, you know, so high in estrogen levels that can be really, really helpful as an addition to the diet. And there's even a supplement called Dindolylmethane, which is the active ingredient of cruciferous vegetables. So if you can't eat 2 pounds of broccoli a day, you can put in your crucifers where you can, and then use some DIM, which has also helped a lot of people clear up their skin because it is so detoxifying. Have you found that with your patients?
Yeah, and I see it across the board in
the magic.
Yeah, in the PCOS community, the endometriosis community, and then even in the perimenopause, menopause world, for sure. Well, believe it or not, we just have a few more minutes. So I want you to talk about maybe the best way or the ways you like to test hormones. And then also maybe answer one other question, because I get this one all the time. Like, you know, many people are saying that the new hormones that are out there that are prescribed, things like Vivel, some of these type of hormone patches, are more bioidentical. Do you agree that those are bioidentical, or is the best bet still like the 80-20 estriol estradiol combo, or the 50-50 estradiol estriol combo? What's your thought there?
You know, as far as what I see in my patients, delivery systems really matter. So some, you know, don't lose heart, ladies, if you have to go through a few different ways of using a hormone. The topical creams can be really good for some people, and that's where you can get a nice biased combination in a topical cream formulated by a compounder to be just the right amount. Like you said, 80% estriol, which is the weaker of the estrogens, but can occupy a receptor site, so keep the bad estrogens out. And a lot of women find early on that estriol alone can help with some of the hot flashes and UTIs and that sort of thing. So with the creams, you can do the Biest, and I like those a lot, but the transdermal patches are also very effective at delivering hormone. They're real easy. The Vivel patch and the Vivel dot and the Climera are FDA approved. So at least we have some FDA approved bioidentical hormones. So that if that makes you feel better, women feel better that they're using something that's FDA approved, then by all means use a patch. You can use it for a week on and then take it off for a couple days. Very few women some women get itchy or, have a rash, but that's not usually a problem. But the important thing with that is that you want to add the progesterone in as a topical or a cream. They don't have progesterone patches. But NAMS, the North American Menopause Society, that is so conservative and has taken a long time to move over to the bioidenticals, even approves the transdermal patch. Wow. So I think, it depends on what works better for you. Some women can't remember to use their cream, and it's easier for them to have a patch. What do you find?
It depends on the patient, right?
Yeah.
So some do really well. A lot do well with the creams, but some hate a cream. So
yeah,
sometimes we'll do a troche. I've seen an uptick in the use of vaginal estrogen, vaginal progesterone, as well.
Which can be great for vaginal dryness, and that's such an issue with women.
Yeah,
a certain age
too. But
and I don't think these hormones, the bioidentical, they're all bioidentical. That what you're talking about, the Biest and the transdermal patch. So either way, you're getting something that's derived from plants that's made. If they're made in a lab, yes, they are, but they're made to be identical in structure and function to the hormones your own body makes. So they fit. They fit perfectly, like that key in the lock.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have a lot more choices now.
I think that's such progress because, I think back to my 20s and over 20 years ago, and I was on bioidentical progesterone at that time. Don't need it anymore, at least currently, just because so many of my health markers are balanced. I anticipate needing it in the next decade, but it's just at that time it was so radical to be on bioidentical progesterone, and I think we've come so far that I think that's really encouraging to see. Now, we just have about a minute left. So talk to everybody about testing. And I think you have a special offer for my listeners and viewers.
Well, I test through CRT Labs, given my long experience, and because they have an amazing comment field that really interprets and customizes all the results. And then we have a customized rebalancing guide. So we'll look at your test levels and say, okay, your testosterone levels were low. What can you do naturally to raise and boost your levels, like strength training? We may suggest certain vitamins and remedies, and you can find our testing online at yourhormonebalance.com. My daughters, who used to get really tired of me talking about hormones, are now running the business pretty much. And they're Jesse and Ryan is our co-founder of Your Hormone Balance. Jessica, my daughter, is an Institute of Integrative Nutrition health coach, and between the three of us, we are hitting it hard with all the education. Go to our Instagram. It's great. And we have a symptom quiz online. So take that quiz, and then we'd love to offer your listeners today a $50 off our kit and consult package. If you want to offer that at some code, you might we could say TAZ50.
I love it. TAZ50.
And you'll get $50 off that kit. And then we provide a wealth of information. And we do have health coaches you can talk to. So we're trying to provide all the education we can, because really, I found so many women are taking matters into their own hands. They don't necessarily, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's the first step. Learning, becoming aware, knowing the symptoms of hormone imbalance, knowing that a heavy, painful period is not normal, not accepting that, oh, you just need to be put back on birth control.
Right.
Or you just need to be on an antidepressant. That's not a good enough answer. That is not the cure, and that is not the best approach. So we're just trying to add into working with, along with side people like you. Thank God you're there. We need you.
I love the work I do. I'm very passionate about it, but I know I sit on the shoulders of really big giants who've been in this field for a long time. So it's such a pleasure to have this conversation. I feel like I could go on forever. There's so much we didn't even touch when it comes to this topic, but that's just the nature of hormones and talking about hormones.
Yes.
But
We can have a part 2 sometime.
absolutely. Do you want to
All
share
right.
that Instagram handle? What was your Instagram handle
Oh,
again?
it's at your hormone balance,
Okay.
at your hormone balance, and then just yourhormonebalance.com. But the Instagram is fantastic and it's fun and funny, and we have a great newsletter too.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
yeah, I hope your listeners will go there.
All right, guys, check it out, and continued hormone content coming your way. I promise this is not a topic we're going to move off of anytime soon. And for all of you watching and listening to this episode of Superwoman Wellness, remember you can rate and review it and share it with your friends. If you email me your review to hello@drtaz.com, I'll send you a free bottle of booze. All right, I will see you guys next time.